And I'm going to mute everybody. Okay, so we're going to begin with grounding and centering. I'm going to give a little talk, then you'll have a chance to respond to the talk, introduce yourselves, and we're going to do meditation today. So thank you all for being here, for joining us, for your interest in your practice of meditation. And let's just start by connecting inward to our inner experience. So begin by feeling your connection to the earth, under your feet, through your seat, and feel the qualities of the earth, the stillness, the vastness, the openness. And notice as soon as you tune into them, how those qualities begin to infiltrate, begin to seep into your body. And also how they begin to animate your spine. So the support of the earth begins to lengthen your spine. Open up the back of your head. Your ears come over your shoulders. There's an opening through the back of your neck. There's space between your teeth. Your tongue can float in your mouth. Your elbows drop under your shoulders. And there's a sense of dropping into the openness of your body, into your internal experience. We're going to be talking a lot about your inner experience today. So just feel into your inner experience now. You'll notice probably the physical experience of that, sense places where there's openness, places where there's tension. But you'll probably also notice the emotional tone of that, the energetic tone of it as well. And also feel your breath coming into your lower belly, below your navel. Then just noticing how the phrases of our mantra land for you today. Remembering that I am intrinsically good without exception, and that I've been given this precious opportunity in my unique life to find ways to engage in my daily practice in my everyday life. When I open to the vastness, stillness, silence, peace, and stability of the earth, that vastness, stillness, silence, peace, and stability opens into my body and being. Remembering that my heart is open, tender, and responsive, I enter into my relationships as part of my everyday life. Now let's just take a moment to connect with each other and our unique configuration of community today. So each one of us who has made the time to be here for each other, and also to our community who is not here in this circle today, but also, very much that may be joining us later on the recording. Also, our community at large who also very much needs our support and stability, and do feel that connection as well. Okay. So I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, and honestly, it really didn't come to me until this morning. But just being present to our community over the last few days, and the unfolding of our collective life as a community. Noticing as we're entering into a new book here, many of us reading the new book, Daring to Rest. That book is touching me quite deeply, and I'm very much feeling called to the book and to the deeper intention of the book, which is to rest. But also, I think for me, at least, the intention of the book is to draw us into our inner worlds, to open into our inner world. That's really what's coming forward for me out of that book. And then also just really opening to what is alive for many of our members right now, which is just seems to be a turning up of the volume of the experience of our lives, whether that be a deepening of the experience of our emotional landscape, and also just what may feel like an explosion of the experience of our outer world. But I'm going to talk to you, contextualize it a little bit more about that today. Contextualize it in a way that what happens is when we awaken to our inner world, which is what these practices do. Our meditations, our somatic meditation, we're really awakening to our internal landscape. With the yin yoga, we very much are awakening to our internal landscape. What happens is that also awakens our emotional range, and I'll talk about that. But it also wakes us up to our outer world as well. And there is a lot going on for many of our members. We're seeing a lot of loss that's affecting our members in a very deep way, a transition towards loss and end of life, and also a recognition of relationships that just are not working the way that they can when you're numb to your experience. So over the coming weeks and months, we're going to be delving into this book, Daring to Rest. And as a community, we are going to be exploring practices that are going to allow us to delve into our inner world, which include Yoga Nidra, or sleep yoga, and also somatic practices. Today I'm going to introduce you to another somatic practice that helps you to open up to your inner landscape as well. It's one that we're all familiar with as yogis, but I think we're going to do it in a little bit more mindful way. And also because we have been practicing yin yoga for yin yoga works. It's ironic, isn't it? It's such a slow practice, and yet it works very quickly. I mean, how long have we been practicing it for? A few months. All of these practices really open up your inner landscape and your inner experience, and really broaden that emotional experience as well. And this is really very different from our business as usual way of living, which is actually quite disconnected from our internal experience. Business as usual is usually very much up in our heads. And to connect this to our theme for this month, right, is that kind of planning and doing and overriding and making things happen. This is where we're very much mesmerized by our thoughts, by our plans, by our to-do lists, by controlling our lives. But as we become more and more connected with our internal experience, we will find an increased emotional sensitivity, which, quite honestly can be a little scary at first because we're not used to experiencing that kind of emotional range. But it's really okay. It's just that, especially in our culture, we're just really the only emotion that we're comfortable with is happy. I honestly received an email this morning from somebody who would call themselves a friend of mine, who said, I only respond to your posts when you look genuinely happy. And I was like, wow. So our friendship is only acceptable to you when I am displaying the emotion happiness. You know, like there's a greater dynamic range to me as a whole person. Like that's interesting, right? You know, we have a huge emotional range as human beings. This is part of our emotional intelligence. So as we wake up to our inner experience, we also begin to wake up not only to our felt sense of being, to our emotional bodies, but we also wake up to our own lives. And a lot of things that we might not have realized were happening in our lives, you know, we start to take the blinders off and start to see what's actually going on. And also with this, it may feel like these things are beyond our capacity to meet them as well at first. You know, there is a widely held belief that is also being sold to us in mainstream culture that if we meditate enough, if we practice our yoga enough, if we become more connected with our inner worlds, then our life will become calm, peaceful, tidy, neat, orderly, reliable, comfortable, secure, and happy. Yet, as we connect with the internal layers of our body, we do start to connect with the deeper layers of our emotions. And this is often emotional territory that we've pushed aside, that we've held very deeply in our bodies. And particularly as we practice yin yoga and the somatic meditations, we're going deeper into our inner world. We go deep into the connective tissue, to the fascia, to the bones, to the ligaments. Like, we're not staying on the surface layer of the muscles here. We're going deep into the cells. And what happens is that information that can be inconsistent with our self-image starts to come to the surface. And the result is that we might feel anxious, that it might make us feel uncomfortable, and we may tense in response to the way that our lives feel out of control and unmanageable. But it's actually a really good thing what's happening. You know, what's actually happening is that we're waking up. You know, we're feeling into our lives. We're feeling into, you know, not just our physical body, we're feeling into our emotional bodies. You know, for those of us that are going on the journey of the Yoga Nidra, we're feeling into our energetic bodies. You know, it might be that you start to feel in and you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. Well, that's true. That's probably true for a lot of us. And that's something that we push aside in a big way, right? With sugar and caffeine and just plain pushing that aside and pushing through. But, you know, when we start to feel into our internal experience, you know, or even you know, we push aside even with a belief that, you know, I can do it all and I'm a strong person and I'm an energetic person. Well, that might not be the truth of things, right? So we start to feel into our lives in a very open, unbiased, very complete way, more than ever before. Because as we come into our internal experience of our body, what happens with 10 points practice, with yin yoga, is that we start to release the tension in our body. And that allows us to actually open to what's happening in our body. And with that openness comes an openness to our emotional lives that wasn't available before, to our energetic experience that wasn't available before. You know, what's happening before is that we were numb to our emotions. We were numb to the experience of our lives because, you know, we ignored our emotions and to a certain extent we ignored the external experience of our lives because we were just so tuned into and slaves to our ideas about how things should be, about how other people should be, about our ideas of how our lives should unfold, about our plans, about our schedules, and about our agendas. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over time, we start doing these somatic meditations. We start doing the yin yoga. And there's this inner world that starts happening. And we start feeling a certain responsiveness. We start feeling our feelings. We start feeling a flow of experience. And we start to really feel what we're going through and respond to what we're going through. And we start to enter into, in a much more complete way than ever before, the external experiences that arise in our lives. So our inner world becomes bigger, more open, more clear to us, and so does our outer world. This kind of automatic pilot that we've been running on, it kind of becomes dysfunctional. Like you get an error, syntax error on it. It just stops working. And those unexpected feelings and that greater emotional range does start to happen. It's not just the happy that is the socially acceptable thing that shows up. Because, living our lives entirely in our heads, wrapped up in our own agendas, both for ourselves and other people, is a very kind of closed off and turned away from our inner experience. And as we come into our own bodies, in our own inner experience, we start to realize things that are going on in our lives. And we also wake up to the fact that our lives are going to be uncertain and they are going to be unmanageable. Unexpected things are going to happen in our lives. And it's okay, because we also realize through these practices that we do have the capacity to meet them. In a yin practice, and I think we talked about this last week, but quite honestly, my life lately has been so unmanageable that I don't really honestly remember what happened in our talk last week. I haven't even had a chance to post it yet. But in our yin practice, we hold a pose for 5 minutes, and in the intensity of that experience, we learn that we can be with an experience for 5 minutes. We start to have a growing confidence in that. 5 minutes, I can do this. I know I can do this for 5 minutes. It's amazing. I just think yin yoga is amazing for that. So what? You can't do meditation right now. It's too much. But maybe you can come into child's pose for 5 minutes. It's intense for 5 minutes. Maybe you can lie on the earth for 5 minutes. We try to move through our day with plans, but there's, even throughout our day, how many of you have noticed that very rarely does your day go as planned? It's, things happen, and, we've even just coming here, so when I say hello to you, a few of you are sick today. A few of you have things that are happening that you didn't plan on. And then life has to adjust for that. Our lives have to adjust for that. Or it's bigger. It's the bigger things that, my heart is just breaking for people in our community, right? Our animal companion of 12 years passes. Our husband is in hospice. We realize a partnership that we're in is not healthy, and we have no idea how we're going to find our way out, right? And then there's everything in the spectrum in between. And, there's nothing wrong with us. It's not the meditation. It's not the practices. It's that as we come more deeply into our internal world and into our bodies, as we feel our experiences with more precision and accuracy and emotional sensitivity, meditating, doing yin yoga, doing these practices, they do not change the external circumstances of your life. Your life is unfolding as your life unfolds. What's happening is that you are actually waking up to a truer, more authentic experience of your emotional range, of your energetic range, of your emotional bodies, of your energetic bodies. And you're opening in a truer, more authentic way to what's happening in your external world, perhaps even for the first times, or in more depth and in a more in-depth way. And maybe in the past you've been more disconnected, more caught up in your head, trying to figure it all out, trying to manage it all, so much in your thoughts that you're so much in your head that you're not really connected to the internal experience of it, to the emotional tone of it, to the energetic tone of it. And I'm here to say too, when life becomes overwhelming, it is entirely appropriate to choose an appropriate edge, to step away. One of our members posted, and you were also incredible at rallying around her, that she just can't practice right now. And that is true when life is falling apart. And then, what is so amazing about that is what you all displayed so beautifully, is that the rest of us who, whose lives might not be falling apart in quite the same way, can step in and support, right? And say, hey, you know what? We'll hold you up right now. Because right now it's not possible. You don't have to sit on your mat right now. It's not necessary. It's too much. Because I loved how Lucille said it. That mat is the most patient thing in the world. It's always going to be here. It's always going to be here. And so you get to choose that appropriate edge. If it's too much, it's too much. You get to back off. You get to see what is appropriate until it feels all right to come back in. You get to temporarily or even permanently take a step back from the intensity. You get to choose. And this is called choosing an appropriate edge. And when we do that, when we are kind and compassionate and tender and responsive with ourselves in that way, what does happen is the edge softens. Life continues to unravel and unfold. And we realize that we actually do want to be in touch with our inner world and with our felt sense of our experience, with our emotional bodies, with our energetic bodies. We want to have this authentic life. We want to have a real life. We want to come back to our practice. And when that happens, we can come back. Like Lucille said, our mat is always waiting when the time's right. So waking up to this inner landscape, to more intense and greater range of emotional experience, to our external life, is a positive development. It's a very positive development in the journey of your practice. It's not that things are falling apart at all. And one thing that my teacher Neil said to me on Friday, and it was so helpful for me right now in my own life. He said, we practice to meet our lives, not to do another course. We don't practice to practice. We practice so that we can be present to our own internal experience. We practice like there's a reason why we have that mantra at the beginning of hopefully every day, every practice, each time you come into our community, because it points to, first of all, our own internal experience. It points to you, right? It points to your precious life, to your internal experience. Then it points to the embodied experience of the earth, the cosmic body, your place in the world, and your connection with that. And then it points to the importance of relationships, the relationality of connecting with the interpersonal body. That's why we practice. We don't practice to practice. Like, that's pointless. So pointless. It's just, that's for pictures on Instagram. It makes no sense. So, and I think that's probably where things feel like they're falling apart, when the external world starts to ramp up and our internal experience starts to ramp up. If anywhere, that's where things start to feel shaky, because we're like, my practice isn't working. Well, if you're kind of looking at your practice as like a practice, right? Like that's the be all and end all, because it's not, right? We practice to meet our lives. It's not, we don't practice to meet our practice. It's so that we can be present to ourselves, to the world, and to the people in our world. So, yeah, I think that's all I want to say for today. And yeah, why don't you guys introduce yourselves, where you're connecting from, if you have any questions or responses to this talk, and then we'll go into our practice for today. Our practice, which is to connect you to your internal world.
I'm Paige, and I'm really happy to be here.
I'm Jane, and I'm from the UK, and I'm happy to be here too.
I'm Linda from Holland, and I wanted to react to the talk because I noticed in my life, in myself, a deeper connection, yeah. But at the same time, I find it difficult to deal with it because there's a lot of restlessness, there's a lot of feelings of loneliness at this time. So at the same time, I feel really at ease with myself because I take the time to experience what I'm experiencing and not wanting to fix it or start doing a lot of things so I don't feel. And so that's a bit, sometimes I think, yeah, I can deal with it very good on my own. I find it difficult to share what's happening with others, and especially with the ones I live with, closer to me, because it's like here in the community, it's not a problem to speak about my experiences or my practice, but outside, in the outside world, nobody knows or something, you know. And yeah, sometimes I feel lonely in that sense. Like, yeah, I think I'm changing and I take the time for that. And it's okay. I'm okay with it, but not a lot of people don't. They don't, you know? It's so that's a bit, I'm a bit like, yeah. It's, for me, it's okay. But it has some, how do you say that? It has some, yeah, I don't know. The thing is that I really do feel very good with feeling what I feel and taking all the time. I do so much less, and that's so interesting because I cannot do more in this day. And when I see what I did last year, it was 10 times more, and still the deep feeling is that this is the right way for me. But I think, yeah, a lot of people don't understand, and that's a bit frightening too. Mm-hmm. I think that's, yeah, people get a bit distanced from me.
That makes a lot of sense to me, what you're saying. The difference between the way you feel you're living and then the way you feel everybody else is living, that there's a disconnect between those two things.
Yeah.
And that there's a discomfort in that too.
Also, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something yeah, normally I want to harmonize all situations for everyone. When everybody is happy, I'm happy. But now I think, no, it's first me. I'm happy with this. I'm doing the things I need now. And it means that some people, don't get the attention they want, maybe. So that's where my practice is at the moment.
Yeah, that's edgy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think too, when you see it in a lifetime, I see it in a lifetime. This is the moment I need to do this. So it's only maybe 2 months or maybe a year, or I don't know where it leads to. So that's okay. It's not in a lifetime. It's nothing to take really the time to do this at the moment. I need it. So be it. But it's also here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that there isn't, even though there's a deep knowing, it doesn't mean that there's also discomfort. Like I think about how my yin teacher, she starts every class with asking us to say how we're feeling using 2 words, just so that we know that we can be with that 2 emotions can be present at the same time.
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is that you are completely comfortable and uncomfortable with your present situation.
Yeah.
And that is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Ivy from New York. And I think that really rings and resonates with me. I always thought it was either or. You're either happy or sad. You're either angry or peaceful. You're either, and it's not that way, evidently. Big surprise. Yeah, you can be several different things at once and vacillate between them and pay attention to each one in its time and hopefully absorb it. It's just very interesting to me that I never realized it before. And practicing to meet our lives, not for the sake of saying, oh, well, I did my practice day. And there are days, when I felt very guilty because my practice has been in the car, on the fly. I felt, well, I'm being a very good yogi because I'm setting aside this hour to do. Well, we've gotten to a place now where that doesn't happen every day. There's a practice of some kind every day, but it's not necessarily lying on the mat. And that gave me a great deal of guilt initially, but being with the people that I have to tend to and being with how I'm feeling that day is probably just as important as pigeon pose.
Right.
Hi, I'm Lucille, connecting from Toronto. I can also identify with the edginess. There was a little piece in your talk, Melissa, where you mentioned I can stay in this pose for 5 minutes. And that really helped me understand how I've been practicing that in my life off the mat. The last 2 years, I had very little income, and I was so impoverished that I had to make a lot of choices about what I could afford to do and couldn't afford to do. And I would tell myself, I can live this way for 1 week, and then I can live this way for one month and 1 year. And over that time, miraculously, I saw and felt people accepting that about me, that I couldn't give all the time. I couldn't be helping everyone. It was all about helping myself. And now that it's turned around and I have my full pension and it's eased up, I would say 80%. I just still relish that freedom that it gives me, and I don't want to go back to my old ways of handing this one this much money and paying for that. And it's taught me such a lesson about, yeah, it's me. I have to look after me, off the mat, on the mat. And, you know, it happens without my awareness. And then all of a sudden, you're right. I wake up and like, this has happened to me and I'm so grateful.
Mm.
And it was very, very edgy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It probably will be again, but there's the both right there.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Petra, connecting from North Vancouver. I had a loss in the family on Friday. My Oma passed away. And sorry. It was not a bad thing. She was very, very old, and she's had dementia for a number of years. And I believe she's 98 when she passed. So lived her life full. So it's not bad. Of course, when you lose someone, though, of course, you have your reactions. I thought I was more ready for it than I was. So what's interesting for me right now is on Saturday, I learned about it on Saturday, and I became quite unhinged, sorry, emotionally. And there's someone in my life who I count on for support who has trouble with emotion. And so I was crying madly and they were pushing away. And that was, I know in my heart that it's right to feel your feelings and to cry when you need to cry. However, the people around you might react differently. They turned around eventually, and it was okay, and they became very supportive. So that turned out all right. But at the same time, of course, it teaches me that people will have their reactions to my reactions. And, so I kind of forgot where I was going with this, but it's about that. It was about what you were talking about your personal edge, and knowing where you are is okay. So even though I'm all over the place and I don't know where my emotions are and where they're coming from, and that's okay. I don't need to know, and I don't need to be anything for anyone else. In that time, it's appropriate, and you know, these things going through my head. But yeah, the difficulty with other people's reactions to that's a tough one. And accepting yourself when someone else has trouble with emotions. It becomes a bigger challenge. anyway, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this weekend. And I'm not too bad today. I cried a lot out, and and I'm feeling a lot more together. But the reality of life and how sometimes you'll have support and sometimes you won't have support. It's a tough one to make peace with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the part that we touched briefly on in that talk, which is that, we can't, it's the control that we think we have over other people just doesn't exist, right? I think that control is an illusion, right? Full stop. The control is an illusion, right? That, even today I've got it together. Well, maybe. Because we're always coming together and coming apart and coming together and coming apart. It's not really about having it all together either, I don't think. Yeah.
It's kind of like you let it go and you take it back. This control thing. You let it go and you take it back. And you don't even notice you've taken it back.
Yeah.
Let it go again.
And I think all these practices that we're doing are really ultimately about letting go.
Yeah.
Letting go and opening. So, and we're opening to, so in the case of your example, right, we're opening to the possibility that, when in your example, you open in such an emotionally vulnerable way that the person that we're opening to might not respond in the way that we want them to. Yeah, unfortunately.
And it's just coming to me to be able to see that in the past, when that would happen with me, I would often say, well, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I keep it together? Why am I not acceptable to this person in this condition? It's not about anything being wrong with me. It's about their reaction to or their trigger for whatever it is. So maybe that makes it a little easier for me to let go of the self-judgment at the time that I'm most vulnerable and I'm not being met with the support I thought I was going to get. So.
Yeah, I think that's really true, because in definitely when Petra's speaking and your insight there, true, is that, what we're talking about here is being very open and true to our own emotional experience, right? And the thing is, in our day-to-day lives, not everybody's had the training that we've had, and they don't have the capacity to be present to the emotional range that we might have the capacity to be present to. I find that very true in my own life, and even with my closest personal friends, because they, as much as they think they've had the spiritual training that I've had, they haven't. Yeah.
And we can forgive that, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line.
I think that's part of the opening too, right? Because then there's that awareness that, okay, well, we've reached a limitation here in their ability to be present to what I'm going through. Yeah.
And it points me always to my expectations that I have, that in a lot of times they are not right. So yeah, I have to assess them.
I mean, I've had this experience even in therapy, where the therapist isn't even able to be present to the emotional experience that I've reached the limitation of that therapist. And I can recognize that there too. It's like, wow, that's okay. And I can watch them playing catch up to where I'm at.
Yeah.
I think also when you lose someone, everyone has their own experience, and it really is almost impossible for anyone to actually know what you're going through. And so it's almost, I'm sorry, I'm using your instead of me. It's almost inevitable that I'm going to feel alone because I'm reacting my own way, and it's intense, and other people have their own experience of the same situation. So we're going to have the same experience, but alone in that. And that's okay too.
Yeah, perhaps. I also think that a lot of people haven't fully dealt with their own grief, and so then that gets projected onto you. That's another thing. Anything else bubbling to the surface here before we take some time for this meditation that I have prepared for you today? Okay, so the focus today, what I wanted to focus on is a breathing practice that we are somewhat familiar with in yoga called three-part breathing. And we have actually, obviously most of us probably have done before. Just the intention behind it, and especially as we prepare to start exploring Yoga Nidra over the coming weeks, I just want to prepare our bodies for it a little bit from a somatic perspective, is that we are starting to explore our internal experience. And so three-part breathing really opens up the interior of our body and helps us to open up our experience and our awareness. And as many of you know, with three-part breathing, we are opening up, literally opening up the inside of our body. So our, particularly our torso, our lower belly, our mid-chest, and our upper chest. And this really enables us to be aware of our body from the inside and what it feels like to breathe into our body. So the three parts are the lower belly, which is from your perineum to your navel, and then your mid body, which is from the base of your sternum down to your navel, and then your upper chest, which is just the area underneath your collarbones. And what we'll be doing is filling each area with breath. It's sometimes helpful. I've never been particularly fond of this image, but I know a lot of people are. It's that you can use the image of filling a balloon and then letting that balloon deflate in each area. What we're doing, part of what we're doing in this breath is getting used to patterns and getting to know the patterns of tension in each area. And we begin to, as we breathe into these areas, start to know where we're holding in each one of these three areas. So when we take a medium to full breath in each area, you'll start to feel through your breath where you're holding and where you can release. And you will also, this also opens up that emotional landscape that we're talking about today. So you'll notice emotional overtones and undertones. You'll notice how your breath is connected with your emotional life and your feeling life. Now, one of the ways that we restrict our experience, and a lot of you will be able to identify with this, is through our breathing. So we all know through a somatic meditation is that when things happen that we're not keen on happening in our life is that we tense our bodies. But the other thing that we do is we start breathing in a very shallow way, or we stop breathing altogether, right? So when there's emotional information that we don't want to receive, we tense and freeze our bodies. Or you guys ever had the crying? I've talked about this, like that sobbing, that the fitful sobbing where it's like, right? That kind of sobbing. Yeah, it's like that gasping breath, right? So that is that kind of, really feeling threatened by your experience, right? Threatened by that emotional experience. it's good, right? Because there's that emotion really coming to the foreground. But that's that you can really relate to that restricting your experience in that breathing way, the really incomplete partial breathing that happens. So this breath really opens up the belly, the mid chest, the upper chest, all three areas, so that the possibility of the range of our experience can increase. And when we do this breath practice for a while, you can breathe in a much more unrestricted way. It's very satisfying. This is a great breath practice, as we discussed in the past, for insomnia. You know, I think it's in our insomnia series, I'm sure it is the breath practice to do when you wake up in the middle of the night, because there's just something that allows you, in my experience, to drift back to sleep. You know, you breathe in, you breathe in, you breathe in, and then you breathe out. And there's that sinking. And that sinking is like falling asleep, you know, it's wonderful. So it gives that sense of relaxation. It's wonderful for insomnia. It really harmonizes the racing mind. It really puts you in touch with fatigue in your body. So I know I've been going through an incredibly emotionally intense period in my life right now, where there's been a lot going on. I have absolutely been going through this tensing of my body. And what happened when I laid down to do 3-part breath today? Fell asleep immediately, because I'm so tired from tensing, so exhausted from showing up in my life. So it really opens you up to fatigue. If you're tired, you'll know it immediately. So you really feel, when you do this breath, all the ways that your life is waiting for you. And it's a really beautiful gateway to discovering your own personal experience, your own emotional experience, the interpersonal body, the cosmic body. It's all there waiting for you in this breath practice. So a really incredible practice. There's a lot here, and it really just brings us into our own internal experience. So I think it's going to be a beautiful one that we can practice over the next few weeks as a gateway into Yoga Nidra, to prepare our bodies for Yoga Nidra. If we're going to, as a community, take this practice as a very deep and meaningful practice, the Yoga Nidra, which I think we can. I think it is a meaningful practice. It is a very deep practice. And I intend to treat it as such. I think shaking Yoga Nidra pom-poms does it a bit of a disservice. I think there's a lot more to it than that. So let's try 3-part breathing, and we're going to do it reclined. So it's a recline practice, and we'll just do a little bit of 10 points to lead you in, so that you release some tension in your body. You feel the support of the earth, and then we'll go into it. Okay, so let your body sink and relax into the earth. Feel the support of the earth underneath you. Let your body melt into the earth. Your knees are bent, your feet are flat on the floor. Or you can have a bolster underneath your knees. You want your neck to be comfortable. It's nice to have an eye pillow over your eyes, a blanket over top of you. You want to allow the relaxation to naturally unfold, so you can really feel ease and contentment. And then begin by feeling into your feet. Opening the awareness into your feet, feeling tension in your feet. Letting that tension come forward, and then feeling that tension drain down out of your feet and into the earth. And then opening your awareness into your whole lower leg, from your knees down through your ankles. Feeling any tension or tightness in the bones and the muscles of the lower legs and the joints, the knees, the ankles. And let that tension release down through your lower leg, through your feet, and into the earth. And feeling your pelvis on the ground. Feeling the tension in the buttocks, the glute muscles, the gripping and the holding. And then into the sides of the hips, the bones of the pelvis, the sacrum, the tailbone, the pelvic floor. Letting the tension from your knees down through your hip bones and the muscles that wrap around the bones of your upper legs release down through your pelvis and your hips and into the earth. And then feeling your mid-back, your lower rib cage, its connection with the earth. Feeling the tension in the lower ribs, the organs of the lower torso, the lower lobes of the lungs. And let that tension release down into the earth and into the ground. And then feel your shoulder blades on the earth. Feel the bones of the shoulder blades, the tension in the shoulder blades up through the collarbones and the upper chest, the upper lobes of the lungs. Let that tension release down through the shoulder blades and into the earth. And then feel the heaviness of your elbows on the ground. Letting the tension from your shoulders drain down through your upper arms, through your elbows and into the earth. And then the tension from your hands and your forearms down through your forearms, through your elbows and into the earth. And then feeling the tension in your face, your eyes, your forehead, your temples, your cheeks. Letting it all release down through the back of your head and into the earth. And in a very gentle way, we're going to continue the exploration of our interior body. And if your hands aren't already resting on your lower belly, you can rest your hands on your lower belly with your elbows heavy on the ground so your shoulders are relaxed. You're going to pick a point midway between your navel and your perineum towards the back of your body. And you're going to begin very gently, with ease, breathing into your lower belly. Filling your lower belly on the in-breath and emptying out on the out-breath. So in a very focused and intentional way, you're going to breathe into that lower belly, feeling your lower belly puff out as you breathe in. And then feeling it collapse and drop back as you breathe out. As you breathe into your lower belly, notice where there's tension. And as you breathe out, let that tension go with your exhalation. As you breathe into your lower belly, feel your breath slowing down. Letting your breath come in and out in a very long, slow, gentle, and even way. When your breath is full, when your low belly is full, you let your breath flow out in a gentle way. Very even, neither fast, neither slow. Just very slow, even, letting the breath flow out. Now, as you breathe into your lower belly, see if you can direct your breath towards the back of your lower belly, towards the back of your spine. So there's a lot of potential towards the back of your lower belly, towards the back of your spine. Extending the breath back, seeing how much breath, feeling how much breath you can take in, not to the point of discomfort or tension, but just feeling how much you can extend the breath back to the back of the lower belly. Letting your whole body relax around your lower belly. Relaxing your whole body at the same time as you're breathing into the space of your lower belly. And notice that you're opening up a big space in your lower belly. This big space is filled with awareness. You may become aware of feelings and emotions that come along, and open to these emotions and feelings. We welcome them all without judgment, without reservation. Our lower belly opens up our relationship with what is most basic to us, what is most fundamental, our relationship to the earth, our relationship with our sexuality. And there may be a lot of feelings that come up for us. There may be a lot of emotions coming forward for us. And we welcome it all. We just notice everything that we're feeling. And keep noticing how open and spacious and big this space in the lower belly is that you're creating. So there's so much to be discovered, just waiting to be discovered in your lower belly. There's space and experience, relaxation, contentment, and joy. It's all waiting to be discovered here in your lower belly. And here it's the contentment and joy of being. Being rather than feeling and expressing or doing or thinking. So breathe into the lower belly. Breathe into being here and feeling whatever you feel. And then move your hands to your mid-chest. So this is at the bottom of your breastbone, the bottom of your sternum. You place your hands at the lower ribs. Your elbows still resting heavy on the ground, so your shoulders are relaxed. And you're going to breathe under the bottom of your breastbone. As you inhale, you're breathing in so that you can lift the bottom of your sternum. And then you breathe out and let that sternum, the breastbone fall back. As you breathe in, filling the entire cavity behind the bottom of the breastbone. Maybe you visualize that balloon there filling on the breath and then deflating on the out breath. So you're taking quite a full breath here. Your breath is lifting the bottom of the breastbone up. It's opening the lower ribs. And you can even feel your breath opening up and pressing into the back, the mid-back there. You want your breath to feel full but not uncomfortable. And then let the breath deflate, collapse on the out breath. And again, breathing into the sides and the backs of the ribs, letting your breath go all the way to the back of the body, back of the spine, back of the ribs. Slow and gentle. And then notice the difference between the feeling tone of breathing into the mid-chest compared to what it felt like to breathe into the lower belly. Your mid-chest has to do with feeling. In the mid-chest, you might notice that your own personal feelings are closer to the surface. Perhaps you feel a sense of impending emotionality. This is the space that gives birth to feeling. And sense if you can notice that, feel into that, the feeling of the heart that is here. And feel the fullness of the experience, the fullness of the breath. And notice the big space that's being created here in the mid-torso. As you breathe in, there's a big interior space being created here. And the felt sense of it might feel a little more fiery, a little more emotional, a little closer to the surface. It might even feel a little edgier. Maybe a little more complex, a little more layered. Just keep feeling into it. Keep sensing the emotional tone of it. Let your breath slow way, way down. Feeling the underlying peace that exists also in the interior of the mid-chest. And then bring your fingertips up to your collarbones. Your elbows can still rest on the ground so that your shoulders are relaxed. Your fingertips will enhance your awareness. And you're going to breathe right underneath your collarbones, bringing your breath right up underneath your collarbones. And you may have to work a little harder here. Apply a little bit more exertion so that as you breathe in, you can lift your collarbones. So we're not used to breathing up this high into our chest. So feeling with your fingers as you breathe in, just checking in to make sure that you're lifting your collarbones as you breathe in. This requires a very full breath as you breathe in. You're probably going to have to breathe in as much as you can. And then you can totally let go on the out breath, letting go of tension. Notice how different it feels to breathe right up into the upper chest than it does compared to the mid chest and the lower belly. So your upper chest is the basis and it's the birthplace for the expression in your throat. As you breathe into your upper chest, you might be able to feel an impending expressivity. A feeling that you might give birth to expression, that you might express your feelings. So we're breathing into the birthplace, not the speech center itself. And you're creating a big space here too. Going back to the spine. So notice how the upper chest opens up. Notice how this is a way of breathing that's really quite non-habitual. It's a new way of breathing. Notice what it feels like to breathe up into this part of your very upper chest. You can even spread the breath along your collarbones and into your shoulders. You can even feel the breath coming up into your neck, into your speech center. Feeling your breath from the inside. So bring your hands back to your lower belly. And when we have more time, we'll connect all these three. But just for now, feel into the interior space that you've created in your body. And just feel into the interior space of your body. And then when you feel ready, you can come up to seated. Okay. Just wanted to check in if there's any questions about that practice. Okay. I will do my best to post that practice tomorrow or the next day. If you are planning on doing the Yoga Nidra journey, then I think it's a good one to be practicing with, because it does open up the interior of the body and it will prepare you for those practices. So that's why I'm teaching it at this time. So and we are on Mondays going to work with it for the next few weeks. So yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for being here today. And I'll see you on the forum this week. And actually we have this Sunday, we have Yin Yoga, a live class this Sunday too at a regular time. Yeah, there's a description written there of what we're going to be doing, which I can't remember at this point, but it'll be a good class. All right, so I'll see you on Sunday as well. Okay, bye everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.